here you see a lineup correction that needs to be made and just a giant power deficiency that comes with it. So all these couplings, and when you combine it with making the pilot do a lot, demanding a lot out of the pilot, out of these long combat missions that we have, and then telling them to come back and land on the ship, this admin task, when there should be focusing on the projection of power that is our primary mission. So we think there's a problem, and we had Buddy Denham here a few years back as part of a ONR project, came up with an idea, and he sat down with a team and went over a list of objectives. What they wanted to do was come up with an integrated carrier landing philosophy that helped to reduce the pilot workload, improve landing performance, and reduce the training requirements so we could focus on power projection from the sea and not this administrative task, with the overall research goal of eliminating the unique pilot skill required for a CB recovery. And their control concept relied on these factors. They wanted to be on board the aircraft. They didn't want it to rely on the ship at all, so it's all internal to the aircraft. They wanted to decouple the flight path changes from any variables such as lineup corrections or gusts. They wanted that flight path control to be on a single inceptor. They needed robust, redundant, and a reliable system before they released it to the fleet. And they wanted to make the HUD more task-tailored to help the displays increase the situational awareness to the pilot. So, what was the solution they came up with? Well, we call it Magic Carpet. It's highly augmented controls for the F-18, EF, and Growler. So we got our parameters and our inputs like I showed you before, and this time we have just the meatball in the lineup, and we control it, longitudinal stick and lateral stick. And now, the meatball is solely controlled by the longitudinal stick, and the lineup is just controlled with the lateral stick. Makes sense, right? And then you get your angle of attack and your throttle are controlled by the flight control computers, similar to how auto throttles is mech'd right now for the guys that currently fly Hornets, but as you'll see, this goes way beyond just simple auto throttles. So, okay, that's great, Magic Legs. How does it all work? So, without getting too much into the nitty-gritty, we'll go over some of the key enablers. So first is what we call Integrated Direct Lift Control, or IDLC. Okay, so in the Super Hornet, when we go into our PA cast configuration with full flaps, which is how we normally land, the trailing edge flaps are 40 degrees trailing edge down. What we've done is we've raised those up a bit, and now when we put in longitudinal stick inputs, we actually can move those trailing edge flaps along with the ailerons to give us direct lift. So with an aft stick input, we lower those surfaces and gives us the direct lift we want with a little bit of tail compensation from the stabilators to control the pitch. Similarly, when we put stick forward, we bring those trailing edge flaps up with the ailerons and we lose that lift directly without needing much of a throttle change. So now let's go into how we actually incorporate these modes into the aircraft. So the first one I'll go over is called Flight Path Rate Mode, or we just shorten it to rate. Okay, and what this does is makes the longitudinal stick into a flight path rate controller. So when you pull aft on the stick a certain amount, it commands a rate of change of flight path. And when you release the stick, you get 0 flight path rate. So the flight path should hold it where you left it. So for those Rhino and Hornet drivers currently, this is similar to a flight path attitude hold mode with integrated direct lift control built in. Okay, the next mode we have is called Delta Flight Path Mode, or PATH as we call it. So here it relies on a few inputs. So first, the aircraft has to know what the winds are, which it gets from its INS. Second, we got to put in the ship speed, which the ship can tell us. And third, we need to know the desired glide slope, which is set by the IFLOS lens. Once we have those inputs, the aircraft with its gyros and with its feedback loops can maintain that desired glide slope very precisely. And this gives us what we like to call flight path on a spring, where you can hold an aft or forward stick input until you're on the glide path that you want, and then simply release the longitudinal stick and it will hold the glide path for you. So here is how we operated around the ship when we took it out there and how we see it being integrated into the carrier environment. So you come into the brake, you go into downwind, you lower your gear and flaps and dirty up. Then you go ahead and click into flight path rate mode, or rate, and you fly that downwind all the way through your approach turn, holding the flight path that you want and holding the roll command that you want until you get to the 45 position right here. So at the 45, Now you can see that the meatball is coming down to center, approaching the glide slope that you want. And then you click into Delta Path Command there in the blue. And once you've clicked into that, the aircraft will hold that for you while you make your appropriate rollout and lineup corrections, and the throttle's also taking care of itself as well. When you touch down, you'll go back into the PA cast mode, and that just is our normal mode that the Rhino flies in when it's in the landing configuration, and you fly away normally. So here's just how we integrated it into the basic HOTAS. So on the left, you got the throttle. Nothing has changed there with your speed brake and your auto throttle control. On the right of note, I'll click it here. So the first thing we've done is with the nose wheel steering button. Once you're dirtied up, if you click the nose wheel steering button, you'll engage that flight path rate mode. If you click it a second time, you'll go into Delta Path mode. And if you keep clicking, you'll just cycle between those two modes. If you want to get out of the modes, you simply depress the paddle switch, similar to getting out of any kind of autopilot mode. And finally, we gave you HOTAS commands to change the ship speed and the glide slope settings with an actuation of the speed brake simultaneously. So now, here's what we did with the HUD. So we wanted to give the pilot more useful information in the HUD in order to help him land on the carrier. So for people who are familiar with the Hornet HUD, you'll notice the velocity vector is missing, as well as the E-bracket. And what we've replaced it with is a glide slope reference line here that's set to your commanded glide path, and also what we call an SRVV, or a ship relative velocity vector, that is simply your velocity vector corrected for ship speed. We've also given you awareness of what mode you're in up here. You still got auto throttle information here, as well as ship speed. All right, so let's get into some videos, the good stuff. And let's go right into shore-based testing. So Rotzi, play the video. This is just in our manual PA cast mode. What I want you to pay attention to are that the trailing edge flaps don't move. You'll see the ailerons moving for lineup. You'll see the stabilators moving a little bit. And then the AOA is a little off because he's having to control that by himself with throttles. Now Rotzi, sorry, I'll go to the next slide. And here's it in path mode. You'll notice the trailing edge flaps are moving quite a bit, as well as the ailerons, and that's the direct lift control working for you. So Rotzi, I'll have you play that one more time just so people can take a look at it. If anybody's seen this before, it's really unique. So take a look one more time, how much those trailing edge flaps and those ailerons are moving. And then the AOA is staying rock solid, and the power setting is staying pretty rock solid as well. So that, in essence, is what we're doing with direct lift control. So now we were comfortable at the shore, and we want to take it out to the ship. So what is our overall mindset there? So first, we wanted to just look at a single configuration, single center line only, to limit the variables. And then we needed to examine the touchdown dispersion on the ship. We needed to look at nominal approaches first, and then put the system through its paces in off-nominal approaches, and also vary the wind over the deck. So here's a summary of what we did on the flight test. So this is back in April on board the USS Bush. We took out 5 pilots, 2 aircraft, over 3 days, did over 180 landings in Magic Carpet mode. And just not to give away too much, but the overall results are that we demonstrated the easy and intuitive flight control that we wanted. We also saw that the new HUD symbology was favorable with the pilots for improving situational awareness, and the touchdown dispersion was significantly improved. So here's a slide showing you kind of the nominal and off-nominal deviations that we did. So not only did we do nominal starts, but we also pushed it to off-nominal conditions, such as high overshooting starts or low undershooting in the middle, and then pressed it from there to really put the system through its paces to see what it could do. We also tested all sorts of wind cells by going as low as 15 knots a headwind all the way up to 40, and then from crosswinds going from 10 knots a port all the way to the dreaded 10 knots of starboard wind, just to see the kind of effect that it would have. HUD configurations. So our 2 jets actually had 2 different HUD configurations. On the left, we were able to simulate the symbology that we wanted by using an instrumentation palette specifically designed to do that. Now, the other jet did not have that. It just had 25X software, so it had the normal display. And what this allowed us to do is do a direct comparison with pilots to see what they like better. All right, so let's get to some more videos. Quit listening to me talking. So go ahead and play this, Rotzi. I'll probably play it a couple times just because there's a lot of information on here. So here's just traces of our pitch, our roll stick, our trace of what the stick's actually doing. So centered, up here is forward stick, aft stick, left, right, and then throttle movement. Obviously, you have your HUD video here, your ILART's camera here. If you notice right now, he's in flight path rate mode, kind of hard to see, but you got a glide slope reference line. He's engaged path mode now. He's got a ship relative velocity vector working for him. And now I'll let the pilot talk.
Angle bank. Show a little stagger. Comes a little aft correction. Real small. And release. Center ball and hands off. There's a verbal. Hands off. Hands off. Slight left. Hands off. Hands off. Hands off. That was awesome.
All right, Rotzi, if you go ahead and cue the video up again, but pause it for me. So that was actually Rotzi talking there, flying that pass. And when you hear him say hands off, that means in a longitudinal sense. So he's still making lineup corrections because you always have to do that. But when he says hands off, that means he is not making any forward nav stick corrections. And he's also not doing anything with the throttles because he has the auto throttles engaged. And then you hear really favorable comments from him after flying away. So go ahead and play it one more time. If you need to see it better, please come up to the front. I mean, I don't mind you guys moving around at all. We might have a little better resolution on this screen as well.
There's the wind, 33 axial.
So right now, you notice he's not putting in any stick input at all. It's holding his roll command for him, holding his flight path that he wants. Very little movement. Center ball at the 45, he engages path mode, and it does the work for him. Now he's just making little lineup corrections. He's using this glide slope reference line to line that up with the datums on the IFLOS and putting the ship relative velocity vector in the LA.
Hands off, hands off, slight left, hands off, hands off, hands off. That was awesome.
All right, Rotzi, or sorry, I'll cue up the next slide. So this one is going to be an underline high start, so a Clara high that, we might be familiar with maybe. And then high come down in the middle to at the ramp, something the LSOs get a little, the hair starts to raise on the back of their necks there. So go ahead and play this, and we'll show you how Rotzi handled it.
All right, I'm pretty much level on the horizon. Things are on.
So he's staying level, obviously going to be really high. Pay attention to the ILART's video to see how high he gets.
100 around a ball, pass. Roger ball. Clear. You're high. Pushing forward, real smooth.
Forward stick input, and he just holds it.
Coming down nicely. There's the ball.
There's the ball.
Release.
And all he does is release when it's on glide slope, makes a little lineup correction, and that's all he has to do. The power takes care of itself. In the aircraft, all it was doing was moving those trailing edge flaps to gently come down on glide slope for him without having to make a drastic power reduction and then get him in a power deficiency in close to at the ramp, which is what the LSOs are always concerned about for ramp strikes. All right, I'll go to the next video. Or sorry, actually that was it. So we'll go to qualitative results now. And so pictured here is the first magic carpet trap that we had on board that detachment. And that was done by Lieutenant Rotzi Robinson over there helping me with the computer. So let's get straight to the pilot comments. What did they like out of the system? First, obviously, the precision meatball control. They even said once they got it in the middle, they were able to control it very well within a half ball. Also, the glide slope stability, where if they were making a lineup correction, even in their wings level transition, the glide slope was holding very, very well. The pilots liked the enhanced HUD symbology, and also they liked the wave-off characteristics. So the preferred method for us to wave off was to add power, go to mill, and then paddle out of the mode so we're back in our PA cast mode. And what that does for us is drop the flaps back to their original 40-degree position that they're in normally for PA cast and gives us that instantaneous lift boost. So we even get better performance for wave off. Similarly, on a touch and go or a bolter, we get those flaps dropping right away with the weight on wheels, and we can fly away a little bit better. So they liked all those things. And their comments, words that they used were awesome, and this is a game changer. So what did the LSOs see out there? So their words were eye-watering. They liked the repeatability of the passes, the consistency. Even with the off-nominal significant deviations like we saw there with the Clara, it was really safe, really smooth corrections. And also they liked that the AOA stayed rock solid throughout all these corrections that they did. So let's look now at the workload and touchdown dispersion. So this gets more into the quantitative results of what we saw out there. So here's kind of an eye chart. I apologize, but what we're looking at here is, okay, we've got the pilot comments, the qualitative comments to say, yeah, the workload was easier, I liked it, but how do we really quantify that and prove it? So the top line here is the longitudinal stick inputs, and it starts from the left side as in manual, then it goes into regular auto throttles mode, and then into rate, and then into path. And you can see with each iteration, those longitudinal stick inputs are reducing in magnitude and frequency. And that shows us by itself that the increasing augmentation is decreasing the pilot's workload. So we've proven that. Next, another eye chart, but an important one. So this is an illustration of the carrier landing area. And on the left side, this is the work that we did with Magic Carpet on board CVN 77. And what we did is we mapped the touchdown points. Even when the guys were CQing in their manual PA CAS modes, we mapped those. And we also took fleet surveys of all the landings in PA CAS mode to compare them to, and found very similar results for their touchdown dispersion. Then when our guys went into the Magic Carpet path mode, they were able to get a 50% reduction in the standard deviation of that touchdown dispersion and get it very, very precise, even less than the mode 1 precision that we demand when we go out and test our ACLS system. Now on the right side, we took data from the JSF F-35C DT-1 when they went out in 2014. Now the F-35 was the original first aircraft to use this integrated direct lift control that we talked about, and then we transferred it over to the Super Hornet. So what we're showing here is they actually had the same touchdown dispersion right about nose on to what we saw with Magic Carpet. And the reason you see it shifted is because they used a 4-wire boat and we used a 3-wire boat. So it's just shifted a little bit. But as far as the overall dispersion from the intended touchdown point was the same. Different aircraft, different boat, different conditions. But what we did was, one, we confirmed the improved landing performance with this Magic Carpet system. And two, we showed that the Delta Path overall concept has the same touchdown performance across 2 different platforms. Okay, so now what everybody's probably interested in is, what are we going to do now? What is the way forward, right? So the way we see this working and how it's currently slated is for fleet release with OFP 39.2. which will combine these new flight control laws with H12 software. And what we'll get is a correction of the small deficiencies that we found while we were out doing our shipboard testing back in the spring, mainly with the stick control gradients. So as the engineers are in there coming up with the gradients and the gains that they want to put in the system, we really have to go out and test it first to see if it's ideal. So we're going to keep modifying that as appropriate based on the different configurations that we put the jet into. Also, we're going to have H12 HUD symbology compliant interface so we get that new HUD symbology that we want. Of note though, this version will not have backup auto throttle control and FADEC operations with it because we just simply haven't had the time to fully vet those. However, you will see solid ATC engaged symbology and warnings when it's not working for you in the HUD, which we feel is very important based on recent mishap with auto throttles not being in the correct mode that you want them to be in. All right, and finally after that, so the version 39.2 is coming out fiscal year 17 is the plan. Our full redundancy version is going to come out with the next release of 40.0 in 2018. And what this will do is correct deficiencies from 39.2, add those backup auto throttle modes in for both dual and single channel or single engine operations. It'll add additional sensor redundancy management to get a fully redundant flight control system. It'll also go through all the degraded modes and make sure that it's all taken care of. And finally, we even have the option of coupling up with Mode 1 and using these new flight control laws in order to make a more efficient Mode 1 pass. So with that, that concludes my brief. I encourage everybody out there, whether they have any experience flying an aircraft or not, to come over to our sim tucked away in the back of the exhibition hall